big challenge for him after switching from the Yamaha squad last year.
Certainly secondary to the Riders World Championship fight, the manufacturers standings. Yamaha 574 points, Ducati 558 points, Kawasaki 520 points. It does go to show what a brilliant and close-fought championship we've had this season.
Yeah, the manufacturers championship goes all the way down to the last race of the season, although in all likelihood it is just down to Yamaha versus Ducati, but we've seen all three manufacturers very closely matched through the course of this season. Bit of misfortune for all of the different riders and those manufacturers through the course of this year, but on the balance of things, the way the championships have played out with Toprak, Jonathan Rea and Scott Redding as the top three riders, and the manufacturers championship as well, it has been about right for what we've seen through the course of this season.
Yes, Kawasaki lost ground mainly as a result, to be honest, of Alex Lowe's being injured, and then when Jonathan Rea had incidents, there was no one there to sort of pick up the pieces, and Kawasaki's run of consecutive scoring that dated back years went out the window. And once you lose major points, they're difficult to make up in the Manufacturers' Championship, because it's only the best scoring rider from each team that counts towards that Manufacturers' title, unlike the Teams Award, where it is the top two performing riders from each team that score in that contest. But the World Championships, the Riders' World Championship and the Manufacturers' World Championship are coming down to this final round. And at the moment, the water is coming up to your ankles.
Yeah, and that gives you the perfect illustration of just how much standing water there is. That's probably on the outside of maybe the last corner, because there is a few marshals out there just wandering around. But as it is right now, it's definitely a little bit of time to get yourself cooled off at this stage for some of the super sport riders.
Well, every reason to enjoy himself, Mr. Dominic Egerton, the 2021 World Champion. And why bother going back to the hotel? You're probably not going to be able to get back there anyway in these conditions, when you can just stand in the middle of the pit lane and have a wash there.
Yeah, and Tommy's been in good form all the way through this season, and nice and relaxed this weekend. He's just after finishing on the podium in the super sport race. There were spots of rain for that, but nothing like what we have now. You can see for Toprak, when he made his way to the grid, he was already making his way off of it pretty quick.
Yes, Emperor Penguin style almost, rushing away, and as I said previously, a little bit of acrobatics to scale the pit wall as well. But this looks to me like a mere formality. I cannot see how the track will be in conditions to be able to race this afternoon at all. These, of course, are replay images. We've long since vacated the grid. Umbrellas wouldn't even withstand it. The palm trees could barely withstand the wind, let alone the rain, and it is still coming down very heavily, and all that's happening is that the water's getting deeper and deeper. And when I joked about an Olympic depth swimming pool, but we're getting closer and closer. You saw just from the marshal there, the water up to his ankles.
Yeah, and it is just keeping to come down at the same degree as well. You can see from these shots just how wet it is out there, and we saw when the safety car was doing its lap just how little visibility there was, especially in that run down towards turn 10. So no real chance of any change in the next while, but certainly for the superbike riders, they're going to just have to come together. They could well be able to talk, as the safety commission traditionally we see three riders from the safety commission come together and make a decision about what to do. We saw that if you think back to Lausches Ring in 2016, we had similar conditions to this. Obviously Sepang, we've had similar situations as well.
Well, I know who might be the only rider who wants to make sure that something happens this afternoon, and that'll be Jonathan Rea, because if the Super Pole race is cancelled, he's going to lose potentially 12 points there.
Well, I remember at Assen when we had the snowstorm a few years ago in 2019, Johnny was one of the few riders that was out there saying, oh, we should be able to race in these conditions. Even with the snow, he knew it was a chance to make up points in Alvaro Bautista that year. He wanted to go out and race, and obviously in conditions like this, he's the rider with most to lose. If he misses out on a scoring opportunity this weekend, it could be curtains for his championship.
Let's be honest, if the race had already got started before that rain came down, it would have practically immediately been red flagged, because people would have been going off left, right and centre. There's no way that you could have possibly continued on in this situation. I think it's, as I said, a bit of a formality at the moment that presumably is being discussed behind the scenes at the highest level, but I can't see anything other than a postponement of this race, and potentially, I do venture into the realms of conjecture now, but potentially we could be looking at two feature races tomorrow, which narrows the window to make up a points margin.
Yeah, it's quite similar to what we saw in Qatar in 2018 when we saw Superbike races cancelled, and that was due to pretty sudden downpour in the middle of the desert, and obviously enough we had standing water all the way around. We had a lot of flooding around the track as well in that day, and conditions were on the limit. But here today, it's pretty clear when we saw the image of that Marshall walking through the puddles just how deep that standing water is, and you can see here from these shots the rain's still coming down unabated.
And the reason that I say most likely we're heading towards the territory of 2 feature-length races is that we've been in this situation of postponing race 1 before, just as recently as the Spanish round during the triple header, where race 1 had to be moved from day 1, as it were, race day 1, the Saturday, then took place on the Sunday morning, and race 2 raced in the afternoon. Now, I'm quite sure that if we were in that circumstance, some of the teams would be lobbying for all 3 races to be run tomorrow, but the schedule is intensely tightly packed.
Yeah, and I think that's where decisions would have to be made, and definitely well above our pay grade, but everyone wants to see 3 races this weekend. The championship battle we've had all the way through this season has been tremendous. You can see for...
Doesn't stop us from offering some conjecture, though, does it? It might be above our pay grade, but it won't stop us from passing comment, as Toprak Razgatlioglu gives a little bit of an extra dousing to Jules Cluzel. Well, I said previously I wanted to know where Cluzel had managed to get to. The number 16 tattoo on his back gives it away, if nothing else. And he and Dominic Egerton before him already claps of thunder now, I think I could hear there, either that or something similar. But yeah, all going on at the moment out there, and I just cannot see how we could possibly be racing in this situation. Watching Scott Redding at the moment as he watches on his final weekend, of course, with Ducati before he moves to BMW machinery next season. Wet weather expert Tati Mercado. There you go. There's a rider who'd fancy going out.
Yeah, I think none of these riders are fancying going out in these conditions. Tati's done well this weekend, though, qualifying 10th on the grid. So on the 4th row of the grid, his best qualifying effort of the season. And that's good to see, considering it's been such a tough year for that MIE Honda squad. Good to see that Tati's been lined up for next season as well. And certainly he's been able to make a lot of progress with that bike over the course of this season.
As indeed. 21 laps we were expecting this afternoon at the Mandalika International Circuit. We wait for further news as to what might be happening here. Just discussions between fellow Ducati riders and former teammates as well. Scott Redding and Chaz Davies. See if we can listen in. Yeah, just talking about tyres there.
Yeah, we saw Scott leave the pits. He was out on slick tyres to get to the grid, and that definitely would have been a hairy ride for him as he made his way back around. And he was just saying that to Chaz Davis, and Davis was out there in the intros. We saw a few other riders go out in the full wet tyres, so everyone was a bit undecisive even at that stage. And now obviously they all come back to the pits and they'll all have war stories of their siding lap to the grid.
Well, if Tati Mercado dropped that rubber duck on the start-finish straight, then I wonder where it would end up. It would give us a good indication of where the drain is.
Yeah, and that's one of the big question marks for all the riders at this stage, just to try and see exactly what the conditions will be like out on the racetrack. But it is going to be a big ask for all these riders. We'll wait and see what happens as the next while progresses. But decisions are going to have to be made at some point. And certainly for all these riders, they'll come together to try and come to a decision.
We are waiting to hear further news at the moment. Still discussions ongoing behind the scenes as to what might be the outcome of the current weather situation. I think you only need to look out of the window to see that the track conditions certainly not raceable at this current point, but also the weather not easing up to any great extent. Yeah, and there are a lot of dark clouds still in the area where the weather has been coming from, so that is the challenge. And you can see there for Jonathan Ray just giving Jake, his son there, a little bit of good luck for his football match later on, and then telling Tyler to get himself to bed. Yeah, Jake and Tyler back to bed because we're clearly completely different time zones and so on, and a reminder that the riders know as well as we do that there can't be any racing in the current conditions, and so go back to bed. You're not going to miss anything. Is pretty much the current answer. And you can see there Sarah from Yamaha. That must be of the duck at this stage, making its way down pit lane. I really hope it is. Tati Mercado, we saw, didn't get to see what the message was that he'd attached to the duck as well, but I'm sure there are a fair few stories going on behind the scenes, and I'm sure those are all being captured as well. But at the moment, the story trackside is the driving rain that is going to play its role in the championship showdown. Well, we wished for this, so this is all our fault. It's not quite come down in the way that we expected or the way that we might have hoped. We wanted it to be a dramatic extra situation for the championship contenders to face. They've faced pretty much everything else as well as one another over the course of 2021. But it doesn't look as though there's going to be any way for them to face these conditions here this afternoon.
Yeah, and certainly they'll make a decision fairly soon about that. But the riders, you can see, they're in no rush to be out on track. They know exactly what the conditions are like, teams as well. So as it is right now, it's definitely a little bit of a wait for everyone until we're able to find exactly what the schedule is going to be and whether or not we'll be able to get racing today.
Close fought and tight World Championship scenario as well. Toprak Razgatlioglu versus Jonathan Ray. 30 points in it ahead of this weekend, the season finale. And, of course, also the Manufacturers' World Championship up for grabs with Yamaha leading the way, but only a mere 16 points in it at the top of the standings. Yamaha ahead of Ducati with Kawasaki trailing somewhat further back and would have been in need of big results over the course of this weekend. Well, we're not exactly in uncharted territory if we do get a cancellation here today. The weather conditions are certainly not going to allow us to race as things stand at present. We've been waiting and waiting and hoping, of course, that the weather conditions would improve and that the track, given the temperatures here, would be able to improve and dry out the circuit to some extent. Air temperature has dropped along with the rain that is continuing to fall. So even if it did dry up now, it would take a significant amount of time to clear that number of centimetres of water. You saw the marshals walking around the track with that water up to their ankles earlier on, and no sign at the moment of that changing.